Hi guys, this is gsm.com and I'm here with the ZTE Nubia Red Magic 3S. I know it's a mouthful, but this one is a special handset. It's supposed to be a gaming phone. It actually is a gaming phone, and it's the fourth model we're testing of this sort. We've played with the Asus ROG Phone 1, Asus ROG Phone 2 and the Razer Phone 2. So it's priced at $479. It's got a unique color and it's the first 8K filming capable phone we test. Also one of the few out there which has a unibody metal design. So let's see what the fuss is all about. ZTE has been banking a lot on gaming phones. Now design wise, we're dealing here with a big phone. It's quite long and not very easy to use with a single hand. That's because you spend most of the time like this in landscape playing. It's made of metal, it's got a unibody metal approach, aluminum of course, it's got a very solid build, and of course all of these special little thingies at the back which makes it seem like a real gaming phone. I'm talking about the color accents, the stripe here which gets lit up once the gaming mode is on, and all of these etchings and color choice. Now speaking of color choice, it goes from blue to purple and red in this version here. I would say that the grip is okay in my view, so grip is definitely no problem. It's quite a massive and long phone. However, in spite of being 215 grams heavy, the weight is pretty well distributed, so in the end it will not feel heavy. Now if you want other measurements aside from the 215 grams, it measures 9.7 millimeters in thickness, and well, that's it, I would say. It's got a cool design. Youngsters will love it. They will also appreciate the fact that the body looks like a robot's chest from an anime movie. The front side, however, isn't much of a looker on account of the fact that this camera here kinda spoils the symmetry. It's a huge phone, but it's well worth it. We go further now to the screen. It's a 6.65 inch, I know it's big, AMOLED screen, a resolution of 2380 over 1080 pixels, and it also has a 90 Hz refresh rate, which you probably figured out already as you've seen me zooming through the menus. So 90 Hz, 6.65 inches, AMOLED, Full HD Plus, and some pretty big bezels by modern standards. Now we have a special video here, and we were meant to watch it in a special fashion. Let's go like this. Okay, Full HD 60 frames per second HDR, and that's the experience provided by the screen. I would say we get solid brightness, indoors at least, a crisp image, vivid colors, very fluid image also, wide view angles. And aside from that, we also have a pretty decent symmetry after all, if you look closely at the black borders. Okay, so at some point during this video I even got to see the pores of the people's faces, so that's a big plus. Now we have other things here. As usual, we thoroughly tested the display, and this is what the pixel arrangement is like under the microscope. This is a pixel arrangement of the pentile matrix variety. Now aside from that, we also did a brightness test, which was a bit underwhelming at 360 lux units. That's how much we achieved. It feels more, honestly, in real life. I felt it was a bit more than 360 lux. This value is inferior to the Razer Phone 2 and the first ROG phone. And by the way, the iPhone X has double the amount of lux units. But we managed to beat phones like the Huawei P30 Lite and the TCL Plex. However, once again, a bit underwhelming, although in real life you will feel that it's brighter than we found. Okay, so settings are part of the equation if you want to tweak the screen. So you can go to this area, display, we got your brightness level, display preferences, you can set it to colorful mode, regular mode or natural mode. We also have a night light, adaptive brightness, and a bunch of advanced options. That's it in a nutshell, and now we move further. We got goodies for you. By goodies I mean the powerful Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus processor, accompanied by 8 or 12 GB of RAM, and also 128 or 256 GB of storage. And no, there's no micro SD card slot here. The phone is foreign to the word lag. No matter what we did and how we did it, there were zero problems with it. And we also installed a pretty cool game. It's called Bright Memory. It's taken from the PC. Okay, we have these preferences here, and we can start the game. Okay, Now we have tweaked the settings all the way to the max level, and Bright Memory is a very intensive game which made the ROG Phone 2 we tested go a bit hotter than usual, so I'm curious to see how this one behaves. Once again, Snapdragon 855 Plus, and we have the best spec version with 12 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage. Now, this is the point where I tell you how we did in the benchmarks, and because I don't want to bore you with numbers, I'm going to be playing while I'm discussing the benchmarks. So first things first, I'm going to start with Antutu 8. In Antutu 8 we were able to beat the Samsung Galaxy Fold and also the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, which is no small feat. Okay, so we have the initial video here. At the same time, we scored below the iPhones, the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro Max. At the same time, in Geekbench 5 multicore, we beat the Galaxy S10 5G and the Xiaomi Mi Note 10, scoring below the Xperia 5 and the Xiaomi Redmi K20 Pro. These are in-game graphics. The action is about to start. And if you are underwhelmed by the results in Antutu 8 and Geekbench 5, the most relevant one is 3D Mark Slingshot, which gave us the first spot. We're number 1 overall. Okay, so action has started. One interesting feature here is that you can see the number of bullets on the weapon, so they managed to save some extra space on the screen by doing that. I'm supposed to break this window, I think. Or maybe, yes. I think I'm going to have to tap it. And that was an explosion. Throughout the game you will be using weapons, and I'm talking fire weapons, as well as swords and special abilities, believe it or not. This game is also available on Steam, on the PC, and if I'm being honest, the differences between the way the PC version looks and the mobile version looks are pretty small, which tells you how far mobile games have come. It's called Bright Memory. It's about $2 in the Play Store, and it's actually worth it, even though you only get to play the first level, and it only takes up about 700 megabytes of space, which clearly shows you it's not the full game. You're going to be fighting dinosaurs, ninjas, huge creatures, even a sort of knight at some point. Anyways, it's called Bright Memory, and I've just played it on the Nubia Red Magic 3S. Now back to the benchmarks. Okay, so we're done with Bright Memory, you get the gist of it, and just so you know, we have the full setup of benchmarks here on our sister site, and here we go. As you can see, the first spot in 3D Mark Slingshot Extreme ES 3.1, as I mentioned before. In Antutu 7, also the first spot. In Antutu 8, the third spot behind the iPhone. So basically, the phone is very high-end and high performance and high level, as you would have expected for a gaming phone. The good thing is that it stays cold throughout the gaming sessions. This is where a special fan, it has a turbo fan, that's where it comes in. You can see here one of the vents and here the other vent, so those are made for the cooling of the device, something you don't see every day. Speaking of temperature, we actually have proof for it, and here we go. What you can see here is a result of 34.5 degrees Celsius, which was achieved when gaming with the cooling on. And here you can see the heat map of the phone. And in benchmarks, it didn't go past 35.9 degrees Celsius. So that's pretty impressive. And it also does not have any exaggerated heat point around the back area. Only here slightly, but it's not a major heating problem. So the temperature test is passed with flying colors. We've played a very intensive game and there was no overheating. Now on the battery front, let's see what we've got. 5000 mAh battery would have sounded impressive if it weren't for the Asus ROG Phone 2 and its 6000 mAh battery. However, this one also delivers. Let's see how much. We go here, battery test. In the video playback test, as you can see, we have 15 hours and 23 minutes. It's solid. It goes above the Samsung Galaxy S10e, iPhone 11 and the first ROG phone. At the same time, we were able to score below the Sony Xperia 5, OnePlus 7 Pro and Huawei P30 Pro. When it comes to continuous usage, and this is actually more important because it can as well mean games, 12 hours and 2 minutes, it's, I would say, good, above the OnePlus 7 Pro, Huawei P30 Pro and Galaxy S10 Plus, below the Asus Zenfone 6, Galaxy Note 10 Plus and Galaxy S10 5G. The charging is decent, 1 hour and 50 minutes, and after 1 hour of charging you should be at about 75%. It's okay in my book. We of course have the typical battery saver features which you already know from other phones. On the acoustics front, things are pretty, I would say, generous. So one speaker is here at the bottom, the other one is here, and it's quite big. It's etched in the top area right above the selfie camera. Now let's actually go in for a listening session. Go here and play. Okay, a couple of quick mentions. So, the acoustic experience involves stereo front speakers with DTS-X support. We also have an audio jack here at the top side, just in case you're wondering. And the actual experience, well, it's positive at first. The phone doesn't vibrate, and there's a bit of a distortion at the maximum volume. That's what I felt. You will not cover the speaker in landscape. That's what I noticed. And also, the voice are well rendered, and the bass is, I would say, so-so. Not the most potent bass out there. The volume is, I would say, good, but I've heard much better on other phones. Speaking of which, let me show you a bunch of our tests. Now here you can see some of them. 79.3 decibels at the bottom with our typical acoustic sample, and 79 decibels at the top side. These results are actually pretty underwhelming. We usually go way past 80 decibels here, so there's that. It's actually below the 200 spot. But this is an acoustic sample. In gaming, we got a more okay figure, 96 decibels. It's pretty good, and it goes above the Galaxy S10 5G and also the Galaxy S10 Plus, at the same time scoring below the Asus Zenfone 6, the Xperia 5 and the Huawei P30 Pro. Okay, and definitely it's below the Asus ROG Phone 1 and 2, so there's that. At least the stereo is real. Now let's talk about the camera and see what we're dealing with. Now, as you probably know already, the gaming phone makers don't put too much emphasis on cameras. That's why we only have a singular camera here, just one, 48 megapixel, the IMX5A6 Sony sensor from the Asus ROG Phone 2, and f1.7 aperture plus an LED flash. The core thing here is that we're getting 8K filming, however, just in 15 frames per second. But there's still 4K 60 frames per second filming. At the front side, there's a 16 megapixel camera, which you're probably going to be using, well, less for selfies and more for recording your face during games. An interesting aspect, the phone also has almost 2000 frames per second slow motion, actually 1920. There's also a night mode, a pro mode, and a camera family set of apps. But we don't care about that, we care about the pictures which we've taken, and believe me, I was surprised. I don't often test single camera phones, and usually they're lower end or cheaper. The Cat S52 comes to mind, the Motorola Moto G7 Power comes to mind, and those are only two examples. Okay, so let's get the whole rotation thing going on. Here we go. Now, a bunch of surprises happen here. It's a singular camera phone, you don't see those every day. It was a lovely sunny January day, and I'm loving the texture of the shots, the texture of the objects we caught, and also the level of details. You can go ahead and take 48 megapixel shots, not just the combined pixels of the 12 megapixel ones. I'm happy with the color calibration, the sky, the clarity, and the HDR really makes a difference. Regular shot, HDR shot, you can really see it making a difference, even though it feels a bit over-processed at times. Once again with the texture of objects. We also taken a bunch of selfies. Some of them were a bit doll-faced around the eyes and the face, but they're coming to their own in the second part of the gallery. Nice texture of the hair, I would say. Not one of the worst selfies around, so that one I can say. Something like a 2-year-old iPhone. That's the vibe I'm getting from the selfies. Back to the main camera, I actually love the blue hues and the red hues, very realistically rendered, and we got some excellent close-ups. The strongest suits of the camera have got to be details, the colors, and at some point also the close-ups, even though close-ups, well, any good phone can take them. A bunch more selfies here. Once again, a lovely way of rendering the hair, and a pretty decent way of rendering the skin, even though at times it feels a bit too white. I will look like a ghost in some of these shots. Going further, back to more toys, excellent clarity and details yet again. This went above my expectations, and it can easily fight the Asus ROG Phone 2, except the zoom is a bit weaker here, and there's no ultra-wide capture, obviously. The focus was spot on most times, and the results are quite good. Okay, so the myth has been obliterated, the myth saying that you cannot have a good camera on a gaming phone, and this happens during the day. Obviously, a larger gallery will be available in the full text review. These have been daytime shots in the park. Let's see the low light capture. Okay, so we tried out a bunch of fireworks shots in the New Year's Eve, and as you can see, many of them are moved. Every once in a while we caught an impressive one, but it's a hit and miss if you're gunning for fireworks. So let's focus on the usual shots in the town. Okay, those are the usual ones. The first part of the gallery was a bit underwhelming, with lots of fog and some weird hues, but later on things settled. I still claim that the halos are quite big, even though their edges are well structured, they're not blown up. They do create some small fog and artifacts around it. I would say that the yellows are decent, they're not very deformed or they don't slip into pink or orange, so there's that. Pretty good level of detail and clarity. And the camera can face the street lights in a pretty okay fashion. This LED sign caused problems with some of the higher end phones. Well, this one doesn't have any problems. So there's that. Doesn't set records for a gaming phone or for a regular phone, but for a single camera phone, well, this is probably the best I've seen when it comes to the low light capture. Sometimes it feels that the night mode tries a bit too hard, but if you look at the results on your PC, you may find yourself impressed. Regular shot, night shot, and actually does a pretty fine job. So there goes the myth that gaming phones can't have a good camera. This one actually has two of them, front and back. Now let's talk about the video. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the video capture done with the same set of cameras. So we have here a sum total of 12 videos. I'm going to start with the daytime one. Here we go. This is the first one. Let's tweak up the brightness in the video app a bit. So first things first, pretty solid clarity, but the audio felt a bit echoey at times when capturing it. Let's check it out. Okay, so you can actually hear part of my music from my headphones, also people talking around, and I felt that the voices were much clearer and less echoey compared to the music that was around us. Okay, so pretty reasonably calibrated colors, nice focus, but also pretty shaky image. Speaking of shakiness, this is how the phone is able to film when walking around. It's not exactly bad. The image is not flickering or deforming, but also not the best stabilization I've seen around these days. If you're wondering about the selfie camera, it's actually more important than you think. That's because if you're going to be streaming games with this phone, you're going to be capturing your face with the front camera, and luckily you're going to be doing that while sitting down, because if you were walking, as you can see, stabilization is not the best, it's a bit shaky, but I like the face texture, the color of the skin, and the clarity, so there will be some excellent game streaming to be done. Okay, we also did the 8K 15 frames per second videos, also 4K 60 frames per second, and those 4K ones look great, maybe except for the dynamic range in the background. Very vivid colors, I would even say too vivid at times, and the 8K, if I'm being honest, felt a bit like a bit of a gimmick. As you can see here, the frame rate, well, 15 frames per second, it's not enough. It's more of a proof of concept rather than anything else. You can showcase it on your 4K or better said 8K TV if you spent that much on a TV set. Okay, and more colorful shots here. I suggest you stick to 4K 60 frames per second and you'd be very happy with the results, clarity, the colors, brightness and exposure. I will have to remind you that the colors feel a bit too vivid sometimes. So that's a daytime capture. The low light goes like this. I'm actually surprised. Many phones are tempted to outdo the yellow hue here. Here is a more understated colored yellow on account of the streetlights. There's a bit of shakiness, but the clarity is actually surprising. Surprisingly good clarity during the nighttime, some weird reflections and artifacts here and there, but a pretty solid zoom, that's what I noticed, and it can handle light sources in a pretty okay fashion. In the end, the video once again felt comparable to the Asus ROG Phone 2, which is actually not that bad. Now we are done with video capture. Let's talk about something else, namely the connectivity. So we have an USB-C port at the bottom. You can also see a microphone here. We got an audio jack at the top side. There's 4G LTE, there's Bluetooth 5.0, there's Wi-Fi dual band, there's GPS dual band, there's GLONASS, BDS and Beidou, and Galileo, and also dual nano SIM card slots. The calls were pretty loud and clear if you ask me, and we also did a bunch of speed tests with a dedicated app, and let's see how that panned out. Okay, so speed test was used to measure the Wi-Fi and the 4G, and on 4G we got as high as 119 megapensecond in download, which is not bad, and 64.8 megapensecond in upload. On Wi-Fi we got to 325 megapensecond downloads, which is pretty impressive, and in uploads it was 25.2 megapensecond. Once again, not bad, flagship level, definitely. Very important for your gaming sessions, especially the multiplayer games and live streaming. Now the software itself, I left some of the gaming parts for this section. It's actually running on Android 9 Pie with a small degree of customization, minimal I would say. Multitasking goes like this. It's got your typical carousel and split screen availability. And if you keep the home screen pressed, you'll treat it to the usual stock widgets and also a bunch of other home settings. Okay, swipe down, you're greeted by the notifications and the quick settings. Nothing fancy here except for some of the options, the multicolor LED strip at the back side here, and also docking station, which is hooked up using these pogo pins here, and also screen recording. If you go more in depth in the settings area, you'll find stuff like the multicolor LED strip with quite a few options, symbols, atmosphere, select LED effects. You can see here interstellar belt, skyline, rainbow ribbon, and add a custom lamp. So how cool is that? There's a lot of customization here. You can even preview it. Not sure if you can see it properly, but you probably can now. It's very cool in the dark especially. Okay, so there's that. You can also impose a rhythm and also have it activated for notifications, charging in the boot. There's also the screen recording and the picture-in-picture, some gaming docking station options, storage, and finally security. Throughout the review, you saw me pressing this here, which is a fingerprint scanner, and it's quite snappy and accurate. And I actually have two of my fingers recorded here, so if I put this one here, it's equally snappy. Other things worth mentioning, I'm going to get back to the gaming thing just for a couple of mentions. So first things first, this little mechanism here will draw the air inside, and this one basically spits it out in order to cool this entire section. The actual fan is here inside, it goes through a tunnel and gets pulled out here. Now we also have gaming buttons, one here and one here. You can press them like this for your shooter needs or racing needs, and you also have this special button here, possibly the most important button on the phone. If you pull this trigger, it's not a mute button, instead it's the game center button, or the game space, that's what they call it, game space. So here you'll be controlling multiple things. First you can see your gaming options here and your games. You got the Aurora band, which is the strip at the back. You got a cooling fan, which I just activated, and then you can swipe like this. You can see the temperature, the GPU frequency, the speed of your Wi-Fi, the CPU clock. There's 4D shock available in some games only. There are the performance modes, there is the handler, there's also the touch buttons here, block messages, block calls, record, and more. So let's access Need for Speed No Limit and have a go and have a look at the options. Okay, so I already showed you a game, which was Bright Memory, and here you can swipe like this and customize your experience here. And now I'm receiving some haptic feedback, some vibration feedback for those buttons as I'm pressing them. Okay, so there's also the performance modes. You can see them here. There's the auto, GPU turbo, CPU turbo, and the super one, which really puts things into perspective and makes the device perform at its best. Okay, so here we are with the game Need for Speed No Limits. I'm playing it on the Nubia Red Magic 3S. And I have to say that if you're wondering about the pre-installed apps, there's only a few of them, and the core experience here is basically, I would say, minimalistic and also clutter-free. Okay, so as you can see, I am moving the car left and right by using the buttons at the top side of the screen. I mapped them before. Okay, so as we do this, I think we have finished the review. We've played one of the most famous racing games and one of the highest end graphical shooters available out there, which made the ROG phone get quite hot, that bright memory. Now it's time for the verdict. I'm going to start with the pros and cons for buying the ZTE Nubia Red Magic 3S, while also trying to focus on this game here. On the pro side, it's a very high performance phone for a pretty reasonable price, $479. It's got those badass looks, that metallic body with a robot chest style look, and it also has a pretty good battery, I would say. At the same time, stereo speakers, which really do feel like stereo speakers, and it doesn't overheat even if you're playing the highest end games. It's my first contact with a phone that has an embedded fan, and it truly works like a champ. And solid battery, pretty okay looking pictures during the daytime and nighttime, nice looking 4K 60 frames per second video, fast connectivity, no clutter in the user interface, comfy when gaming in landscape, also 90 Hz and extra buttons included. Those are the pros. On the cons, it's still a tall and big phone. The screen needs to be brighter if you're going to be gaming outside. The acoustics lack bass. They should actually have more bass, and just one camera at the back doesn't cut it for many people nowadays. There's no bokeh, there's no ultra wide, there aren't many options which people have taken for granted on current phones out there. Okay, so other than that, I would have to say that the 8K filming feels a bit like a gimmick, and also stabilization wasn't very impressive on the phone. So those are the cons. And in the end of the review, I would say that this Nubia phone was a bit of a surprise because it surpassed my expectations. I would say that it surpassed them in the lack of heat. I expected some overheating. I got zero overheating, so that's great actually. Okay, so performance is truly impressive, one of the most high-end Android phones I've played with recently, and that's amazing. Okay, we're also drifting now and steering. Now in the end, if you want a pretty badass gaming phone, this is probably one of the most interesting to get. Some people still regret not having access to metallic phones. This is metallic, it's got the looks of a robot, and it's affordably priced. The Asus ROG phone may seem cheap at first, but if you're going to end up buying some of its accessories, and you are going to do that because it's part of the experience, you'll see that it's actually pretty pricey. This one has an excellent performance, doesn't overheat, looks pretty badass, has a huge screen, has a satisfying experience with a 90 Hz screen indoors, and it doesn't take back pictures, so that's nice. When all said and done, it's a solid affair for below $500. Even if you're not a gamer, you're getting a very high performance phone for $479. This has been the presentation of the phone Nubia Red Magic 3S here at gsn1.com. Hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to check our website in the future. Okay, we're done, and let's show you the website now. So keep in mind, among the gaming phones we've tested recently, this one is actually more appealing to me than the Razer Phone 2, and also more appealing than some of the Xiaomi Black Shark phones I've seen. So this is it from us. Bye bye.